bishop g5 is the move though, I guess. Okay, let's move to some other game. Just okay, we can check what Bella Hotenashvili is doing here. So Olga Gira is white against Bella Hotenashvili. Oh wow, it already became quite exciting. So d4 was the move of Olga Gira, g6, and then e4. So g6 is, of course, well, it's quite flexible for black, but at the same time you give, of course, white a huge variety of choices. Knight f3, c5. Well, there is d5 for white, there is c3, and of course dc5 is one of the most principal. Check on a5 and knight c3. In here, black is almost forced to accept the challenge. And knight c3 is obviously a pawn sacrifice. Black is almost forced to accept the challenge, as queen c5 would be just bad after knight d5. Because what you're gonna do for black? There is a certain threat of b2, b4, surprisingly. Let's say in case of knight f6, which seems to be a natural development, then b4, queen c6, and a nice trick, bishop b5. Just the queen is trapped. So queen d6, it's bishop f4, and if black takes, it's an obvious knight c7 is coming. So after knight c3, queen c5, knight d5. Well, the best for black, as far as I know, is to give check, and just after bishop d2 just to go back to a5, to d8, but of course it's not the position you're normally happy with. So bishop c3 at least, and okay, white has huge development advantage. So, as been said, after queen a5, knight c3, black is almost forced to accept the challenge, and she did so. Bishop c3, queen takes c3 check, bishop d2, queen takes c5. So black has got an extra pawn, and white obviously should have a compensation with two bishops, with especially the dark square bishop may become very dangerous. Bishop d3, knight c6. Well, I guess rook b1 is one of the possible moves here. Rook b1 at once, because we as white are still not sure where to develop the bishop. But rook is definitely belongs to b1, so I guess even rook b1 might be a bit more precise. Anyway, bishop d3, knight c6, and rook b1. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back for a live coverage of 6th round FIDE Grand Prix in Tashkent, Women's Grand Prix. Well, since we had a break, the games progressed a little bit further, and well, this time I'd like to start with an encounter of Chinese. So Zhu Yinjun is white against Zhao Xu. So the later one, Zhao Xu, performs a bit better in this tournament so far. She's in tie for second place with +2. Sorry, for the fourth place with +2. The Catalan has been played with bishop b4 check, and that's a situation we've seen last time. So indeed, white retreated to c1, and then b5 was played. So that's a way to justify a7 a5 is to play b5 as well, to see some space at queen side. So cb5, and e2, e4. Well, actually, don't know if black has a proper reaction to e4 here, because desire will be to take, but then I just thought, apart from taking on e4, which is of course an option, and then rook b8 and so on. Well, actually maybe black is fine in this particular case. Rook b8, bishop b7, but as well white has knight e5, so which is not that easy to understand how to react with black, because, well, bishop, and definitely not an option to take on e5, because after d5 this knight is going to be trapped quite soon. Also bishop e4 is coming, double attacking rook and the pawn on h7. Well, there is bishop b7 option here, when white can try knight c6. Well, actually I'm not sure what's going on. So knight c6, bishop has to take, queen takes c6, eventually winning back the pawn on e4, yeah. And it might be a bit better for white, although after knight f6, queen b5, I'm not sure what's going on. Maybe still the pawn is falling, then it's just okay for white. And of course after knight e5 we have to consider knight f6 back at once, then knight c6, queen e8, and it's a question if white has something decisive here. Oh well, perhaps knight c3 is already in, and well, e5 and been mentioned, like it's obvious. Black has to take knight e5, bishop b6, and then queen d7 has been played, and bishop d4. So that current situation, yeah. Queen d7 and bishop e4. Bishop d4. Man, I just wonder what's gonna happen in case of castle short for black, which is obviously a natural move. Yeah, that was actually an option after queen d7 to play bishop a7 as well, to drive this rook back to a8. So it was for up to white to decide where he wants this rook to be. Bishop a7, rook a8, bishop d4, or bishop d4 at once, what actually happened in the game. So I expect black to castle really, and well, I'm not sure what white is planning to do, because, well, basically what has to be considered is to take on e5, to move the bishop to e2, and not to move the bishop, but just to progress in some way. I don't know, still f4 comes into my mind, takes, and trying to make use of this strong bishop here, as well as the pressure on e-file. But it's a question how it's going to be developed. Although in this one, for some reason, I believe black is just fine. Though it's still complicated. Just a second, castle. Well, I got it. Sorry for not seeing that, but white can capture the pawn, so that's the reason why actually she didn't play bishop a7, so white can capture the pawn on a6. Well, and in this case, she obviously going to be better if she's given a chance then to take on e5 and play bishop e5, or okay, maybe she's just threatening bishop e5 at once. But it looks like black can play b5 here, forcing white to take, and then rook f takes c8, and black should be pretty much okay. So black already got rid of well, covered development lag, and well, perhaps black is just fine here, and I don't know if black is not better there. Though bishop a6, while being an option after castle, maybe leads nowhere, and white has to look for something else. But anyway, black is ready to come up with b7, b5, then bishop b7. Okay, let's move further. So Kosteniuk with Nakhbayeva, and well, it's something quite complicated here. So bishop e6. Well, and bishop e6 turned to be a blunder, I guess. After g4, knight h6, white came up with knight d6 check. And after cd6, c4, the queen is trapped. It just missed this line, and well, it has to be said it's well, it's not really that much clear, I have to say. So black took on f3, queen f3. It's definitely black blundered this one, but because it seems like she had better options, but at the same time it looks like some teeny weeny compensation for black. So de5, de5 has been played. So basically what black has got is a couple of line pieces and the pawn for a queen, but in case of taking h6, bishop h6, then as well black has got some positional benefits there. So if white plays queen f6, which seems to be quite logical, then castle, queen takes, but it looks dangerous for white, I have to say. Even something like bishop g4, then, well, looks like compensation, I have to say. And eventually gonna meet f4 with f5. Basically that's it. Although still, the whole line was designed for black to try to get d7, d5, but Stefano didn't manage. Castle. Well, f4 seems to be an option, but I don't know if f5 works for black. Something like f5, queen f3. Well, it becomes a little bit tricky because those pieces might be hanging over e file. Castle f4. Maybe black just has to play a6. I don't know. Well, in this case, on the other hand, in this case, knight could be retreated to a3, and then eventual bishop b6 brings black only trouble. So maybe it's a bit more pleasant for white, and even I'm not sure if there is any need to hurry up with f2, f4. Maybe white can play something else. So once again, moving further, and a game of our leaders, Ampi Conero with Harika. Knight a4, and black played f7, f6 instead of what we were recommending here. Also, of course, one of the logical possibilities. So it covers e5 square, so knight cannot jump to e5 so easily. And maybe it means, in case of knight c5, black won't retreat to c8, but rather to f7. Well, perhaps bishop c8 still is the most solid option, and then this knight's gonna be played to e6, challenging white's strong knight here on c5. Looks pretty much complicated, and eventually tension is building up. So I was expecting more of a quiet play here. Yeah, this seems to be. It's going to be still. It's going to turn to be exciting later on. Well, then we move into Elina Danielian with Nafisa Mominova. So bishop d4 and rook c8 at once has been played. So I just wonder what's going on here. So bishop a7 I expect, then rook a7, and there is still this. Well, perhaps on bishop a7 white has intermediate knight c3, then capturing the bishop. Yeah, right. So that's the point of Mominov's play. Knight c3, queen goes, then taking e2, and taking a7, which is still a bit better for white, but maybe it's just enough to carry it. So rook b1. Yeah, still it's a bit unpleasant. It still looks like it's gonna finish in 4 versus 3 eventually. So rook's endgame also. Even this one is not that pleasant to play, of course. Well, so checking for one more time the situation in cross table, and eventually well, let me check a cross table for a little bit. So take the diagram off and let's find out who has the best perspective here. Okay, so Humpy and Harika are leading, but Harika, yeah, both of them are actually playing a nice tournament, and I don't see. Yeah, it's hard. I mean, it's hard to say who has a better, easier opponents after this game or so. So it's pretty much depends on direct and counter here. So if one of those two wins, it's basically gonna mean very good chance to win the tournament. And of course, since Conero won already one leg of Grand Prix, if she wins another one, it's going to be, well, pretty much of a statement for an overall win. Well, let me check what's going on in the other games. Just a second. So, I mean, we're covering it more or less. Oh well, then it becomes interesting in the game of Chinese players. So we got one more move, or even a couple of moves here. The knight f6, queen c2, and black decided to take on e5. Actually, I have to say it didn't come into my mind. First, knight d7, so that means black accepts if there. So this f5, f4 is definitely a threat, which is not that easy to stop. Oh, perhaps gf5, gf5, f4 might be an option, but I'm not sure if white can keep all the things together. So could be something with d4, and then okay, all this white pieces might just start hanging. f5, white took on f5. Okay, we will see later what's gonna happen. Alina Danielian with Nafisa Mominova coming back, so rook c7, rook bd1. Bit of a surprising move. So rook dc8, and was what Mominova played. And well, to be honest, I don't see at the moment. I don't see much for white then, unless white is planning something like queen b6. Don't see much of an active plans here. Rook d4, of course, is an option, but don't see how to increase this pressure. Rook d4 and queen b4 perhaps. Yeah, but it's better for black in this position. It's hard to get to those a5, a3 pawns, because normally they are a little bit weak, but ac8. Well, h3 and h6 has been included, so now no more back rank threats. But h3 also supports white's bishop g4, so white can some point can play bishop g4, provoke f5, and then just retreat with the bishop and try to prove that this f7, f5 would be a weakness. So we shall see how it's going to develop. Well, I just wonder how long it's going to take Alexandra Kosteniuk to finish her game against Guliskhan Nakhbayeva, because it seems really tough for black to defend. So bishop c8 indeed was played, and then queen b5 was the move of Alexandra Kosteniuk. So I've been recommending queen b6, but queen b5 is just as good, it seems so. So I don't know, black has to play king c7 probably, but still it looks terrible. Though I have to say, if black's gonna manage to, I don't know how, but if black's gonna manage to run with her king to king side, then it still might be a bit of a chance. So I mean, for example, in this case, queen e5, king d7, and hoping to, I don't know, to play rook e8 to hide the king somewhere on g8. Well, still, it's almost unlikely. So queen b5 and what to do. Yeah, looks like this game is going to finish soon. Queen b5, bishop b7 was played. Well, Alexandra plays c4, c5, which is, of course, what's the main threat in this position. c5 followed by c6. And black almost running out of decent options, and c6 is just a deadly threat, and I don't see how to face it in a proper way. So, for the first time in this tournament, we can speak about, well, disaster in the opening, because really Guliskhan just misplayed something here, and after 13th knight d6, it looks like it was already pretty much over the game. Yes, I guess it won't last for long. After c5, I don't see the proper reaction for black. Well, coming back to Olga Kiria with Bella Hotenashvili, a couple of moves being played here. So queen a5, bishop c3 was the move of Olga Kiria. Bishop c3, and I'll be surprised that, okay, I don't see why is that, but black didn't take d5 pawn, but instead played queen c5. Rook h4 was the move of Bella Hotenashvili. Oh, sorry, of Olga Kiria once again. So, well, white's intentions are clear to play queen h6. Don't know if black can defend against that. I guess it's not enough still, so that's too much of material advantage for Bella Hotenashvili. Actually, if Bella wins this one, it's still gonna mean like she's pursued in the leading group. Still, there wouldn't be any draws for her, and that's exactly what she's been doing in her first leg, which went quite successful for her, because she had started with 50%, I guess, in Geneva, the first leg of a Grand Prix of this cycle, which she eventually won. She started with 50% after, I guess, losing a couple of games as well. But then she, well, performed a fantastic streak of 4 or 5 wins in a row, something like that. So if she wins this one, that might be, well, really